My name's S. Rob and this is Horrormail Tales. A letter. Tree baby. Trees can be very old and yet some do not get so old. But they all fall from the earth as we do, and so our shared roots may explain the story. It has long been thought that there existed elemental spirits that are manifestations of some force upon the world, and one such elemental creature had a definite beginning, something often not known. This small creature started as a tree, when, for no apparent reason, the smallest root began to grow as if it was alive. In fact, it was long thought that such roots become alive through magic, at least for a while. But this root was not the result of deliberate magic. But anyway, there are many plants that grow to take an apparent similar human form. However, this root, being ever so small, did not know it was not supposed to move. Something which may not have helped, because many would argue it should not be thinking at all. But think it did, and move, until the small root, the beginning of a tree, resembled a baby more than a tree at all. It resembled a baby so much that some pathers thought they heard it cry. But it should be remembered that there is not much distance between thought and reality, as one may imagine, and so it did cry. The crying plant so bothered a childless woman that she took it, picked it up, and found it didn't have much connection to the soil at all. But through her love it grew and grew, but never fully becoming human, but nevertheless far more than tree. She wondered how such a thing happened, but she did not worry, because familiarity makes us happy with even the strangest of things. In fact, in time, the tree figure turned into a young boy. However, she knew she could not send it to school, and so kept it with her. But there was no problem, because the entity looked enough like tree that, with there being so many trees around, all it had to do was stand still, and people would think it was simply some odd-shaped tree. In fact, the tree boy liked to stand still. Although he could talk, he didn't walk much. His mother thought he stood still too much, and kept telling him to move from time to time, because she did not want her boy to grow roots and be unable to move. In time, the tree boy became a tree man, so much so that he even had a beard of bark. But by this time his mother had grown much older. The tree man worried about his mother, because she was the only mother he'd ever known, apart from the forest herself. His mother loved him, and he knew it, but he also knew he was not the type of son she had hoped he would be. He knew she hoped he would become more human looking, and that he would talk more. But she never understood that his true speech was the way he moved and rustled leaves he had. But the old woman was making something to eat as usual when 3 people he had not seen before ran through the forest. The tree man did not move, because he could watch what was going on from where he was. But then he saw that they were getting nearer to the house. Although he rarely went inside anymore, he knew it was the home of his mother, and so he followed them. They kicked at the door, all 3 of them, and he was angry. He knew that a tree had given its life for that door, but knew it was nature's way. One thing to die, for another to live. But he felt the kicks like a pain, and thought of his mother terrified inside, and so he did what he had never done before. He shouted. "Get away from there," he shouted. But they could not see where it came from, and so he ran through the forest. When he came to the men, they pulled back in terror and then pushed forward. But the tree man had strong bark, and he was not easily hurt. However, the three men could not say the same thing, and with one mighty push, he found that he had not only knocked them down, but killed them all. But he was calm as a tree would be, and knocked on the door, and found his mother arrived. Of course, she was worried, and did not know what to do. She was worried for her son, and worried that people would find out about them. Her son, find out about everything. The tree man told her not to worry, and he simply took the bodies and went to some place further into the forest, and he dug a little hole, and it opened up, and he dropped the body in. And then he did the same again and again for all the bodies. They were safely buried in the ground. As it happened, people did look for the three intruders, but they were not found, because the tree man could, if necessary, move the bodies around. But the time came when his mother got very old and died, and so he buried her too, and stood there next to her like a friendly tree. But the time came when the body had gone. It was so decomposed that the body of his mother was in the very soil, and so his earth mother and human mother had become the same. Knowing this, he felt he should try to move into the human world. He wondered that if he dressed and acted more human, if he would blend in. And so, over 100 years, he slowly added a scarf. And then, if that blew off his arm like branches, he would get some other clothing. After time, someone said he looked like a scarecrow, until one day, someone said hello, and after saying hello back, he tore up his feet from the ground and walked along. He walked until he saw houses, and then, after some time wandering, he wandered into a city. He started off as a beggar. Then he learned to sing and dance, and eventually became a busker. He got a house and a job, and in time got friends, human ones. But he wondered, how had he come to be as he was? Therefore he left and went back to where he had started off, and he strolled around into the forest, hoping not to become tree-like again. But as he did, he looked at the trees and plants with new eyes, seeing them both as he had and how a human would. But as he strolled, he saw right there a small plant looking for all the world to be a human baby. He could not ignore it, but did not pick it up. But at once he knew what it was. It was a plant with a human soul, and he thought, how could such a thing occur? It was then that he remembered about the 3 teenagers he had killed. He'd thought they were men at the time. He was a product of violence, just as it had taken 3 murders to create this plant, so it would take 3, because this is nature's way, and it is how the tree people come to be as us. So he is the most human of things. He walked away, and tried to forget everything he knew. He went back to the city and lives there still. However, things do not end that neatly, because things continue and must be done. And the tree baby had left alone, save for the trees, other plants and of course animals. But this tree baby, having no human or human-like role model, and being more intelligent than a plant, found that it naturally tended towards wanting to be with the animals. It wanted to play with them, be with them, and then one day, as some wolf cubs played, the tree baby wanted to play so much too that it wagged a branch as if it was a tail and began to move. The puppies were very interested at this, and so the tree baby tore up its roots and played with the wolf cubs. But the tree baby did not become as a wolf fully, and instead transformed between tree baby form and that of a young wolf. In time, the tree baby was able to become so much like a wolf that it became accepted by the pack, and so it decided to stay that way. The tree being was effectively not like a tree being because it was a wolf the whole time, except for that human soul it had. But it grew and grew into a full-sized wolf. It hunted like a wolf, lived like a wolf in all ways, but it nevertheless had the power to transform. And one day, while on its own, it looked at the trees of the forest and it remembered what it was, and it found that it started to become tree again. But not the type of tree the other beings were, but a man tree. A thing as much man as tree. It stood still for a while and then started to move again. It then wandered around, but the forest had changed, it had grown, and it could not find the wolves. But liking to be a wolf, it explored as a wolf would. It then came upon a woman who was the kindest person it had seen. I wished not to kill and eat her, but for some reason meet her, and so it wandered over and wagged what looked for all the world to be a tail. The woman was startled at first, but in time it came back and met her. More and more, each time learning something about being human. In time it became different enough to look almost like a domesticated dog. Near enough to meet more humans. It even learned to take human form, although it had to learn about such things as clothes and manners, and lived this way for a year until, now being more intelligent and human-like, realised that it had not really a home at all. It therefore decided to explore and walked among the world, being both wolf and man, switching between the two. It learned how to steal clothes when needed. It learned to communicate as human and as wolf too. It even started to meet women and wolves and was loved by both. It decided to not get married or take a permanent partner, as wolves do. But time takes us onto paths we sometimes did not plan, and one day met a woman it fell in love with completely, and on the same night it met the prettiest female wolf it had ever seen. He was so enraptured by both that before he knew it, he'd fell in love with both. But he could not find a solution other than to be with both. But he reasoned that as there were two of him, there must therefore be two females for him. He spent time with both, and at the same time was to be the lifelong partner of the wolf and to marry the woman. It was then that the woman had a surprise for him, and after he asked her to marry him, she transformed before his eyes to a wolf and back. He did not know what to say, but she explained that she was the wolf he had fell in love with, and she was glad that he was a werewolf too. He smiled, and then his smile turned to worry, and so he decided to show her what he could look like, and so he transformed from man to wolf to tree man, and then to tree wolf, and then back to man again. The woman was surprised because she had thought that he was simply a werewolf like her. She asked him if he could transform into anything, but explained that he could transform into a tree-like form. He told her that this was the form he was born with, and into a man, into a wolf. He also said that he could only transform into a form after a very long period of being around a type of creature. Decades, in fact. But she was happy, and in time she got pregnant, and she gave birth to a child. But the child could take not just the form of a wolf, man and tree, but anything it wanted, and straight away. And this is how the rarest of things, a proper shapeshifter, was born. One who can take any form at all. Not surprisingly, because he had within him man, animal and plant from the earth, and so everything was his true form in some way.